Okay. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties today, but we made it through.
We made it through.
It's also very hot today.
It's just the apartment, I think. Apartment is definitely a little warmer. We face the sun.
Yes.
Because outside it's like 65 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I'm sweating
Yeah, I
right
know.
now. uh, but despite the technical difficulties, we're gonna use the MacBook
Yeah, we had technical
mic.
difficulties this morning.
Um, and today we decided we thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk about our kind of the whole point of why we're here and
What life is like unemployed.
yeah. So like kind of talking about why um is this talking to? No, it's this. Um because we're here because of Rebecca's program and stuff, and so I gotta turn this down. There we go. So yeah, we're gonna talk about Rebecca's work now that we're kind of getting into a routine-ish. Her experience so far, kind of like what does she even do? Because some people might not know,
Mhm.
and then also talk a little bit about me and like what am I doing right now. So I think it'd be good if Rebecca kind of took it away and started off with just like why are we here? Like what got us here? Why Mexico City? What are we doing? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I can definitely start us off. So, we are in Mexico City, and I am getting my PhD in history. So, we do what people call archival work, which is going to archives. And what is an archive? I think it's important to define that. An
Mm-hmm.
archive is normally a federal or state institution that is the home to many historical documents. We have them in the United States. The Library of Congress is the main one in DC, but so many exist all over the United States. Mexico is the same. Here in the capital, Mexico City, or the DF, or la Ciudad de Mexico, there is a variety of archives, but I work out of the federal, sort of like national archive. It's called El Archivo General de la Nación. Um, and so that's why we're here. My project, which is the dissertation to my degree, requires that I write a long sort of investigation. And my topic, of course, like is very specific. And if anyone cares, I can mention it. I work on women in the colonial period, sort of briefly. And everything that I need is in this institution.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we're here. That's why, like, I've managed to uproot our life a little bit. Um, and so I visit this archive every single day in order to acquire documents that will eventually that are part of the investigation process and the research that I'm conducting. So, yeah, that's what an archive is.
Yeah, and it's pretty much like to somebody who doesn't know. Let's say someone just watched this and they don't know understand anything you just said or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You are pretty much trying to prove an idea and or like dig deeper into a specific topic in history,
Yeah,
and you're utilizing the documents that are available at said archive. It's a fancy library, pretty much,
exactly.
uh, to be able to provide proof of what you're arguing.
Yeah, well
Um,
put.
and also, as a graduate student, I think it's important to say too, like it's I don't want to say it's mandatory that you have to go to an archive, but it's strongly advocated for. Um, and again, depending on your project, these archives could be anywhere in the world. They could
Yeah.
be in your hometown. They could be in a different state in the U.S. They could be in Canada. They could be in England. They could be anywhere, depending on what your topic is. So,
Yeah.
again, for Rebecca, the main archive and the main amount of documents that are necessary for her project are here in Mexico City, and then
And
also there is an archive in Seville, Spain that we will also be going for. So that kind of explains, what's what are you doing?
Yeah.
What's the point of this? And I think also it's worth noting because again, it's not necessarily mandatory to do this.
Yeah.
Again, strongly advocated for a regular graduate student situation. You can kind of just go whenever it fits within your schedule, right? Like,
Yeah, that's always like a little ambiguous, I think, for graduate students because there's no perfect way to do it. This is one of the issues of like being in grad school is that if you're in a great department, and if you hear motorcycles and cars in the background, that's very normal. We live on a busy street, so sorry. But when you're in a really amazing, well-established, and even arguably it could be positive or negative, they have like a year abroad that you go, but like George mentioned, it's so he fiddles with the camera. It's so dependent on your project that your, to be super cliche, journey in graduate school can be so different from like another colleague of yours working on a similar topic. So yes, you can, it's very sort of traditional and custom to spend a year abroad.
a
That's,
whole year though, like that's what I was going to ask
I
because
know, yeah,
the reason we are here is Rebecca received an award, which is
yeah.
a very big deal. Like not many, like two people got it at UCLA, right?
No, it's
Like,
like 11.
well, sure, 11 then. 11 people got it out of a vast majority of numerous people, and it funds a whole year. So like, I don't think you have to go for a whole year if you don't have this
No, you
award.
don't. I think you're right. I think I was trained in undergrad to believe like my mentor there was amazing and he told me like it's very normal for people to spend a year abroad, but I think as like now I'm in my finishing my fourth year in the program, there's a lot of digitized resources. There's a lot of students that go only in the summer for like 3 or 4 weeks at a time, and they're able to acquire enough research or like documents in order to support their research. But I think like if you're able to, it's really encouraged for you to spend a lot of time abroad because especially if you're from the United States and you're studying a country that is not your home country, you almost owe it a little bit to spend time with the people there and understand the culture. It's a privilege to be able to write about other people, especially if you're like a person from a more privileged position that you don't want to be like what we call sort of an armchair historian,
Hmm.
which is like a person who has never visited the country but writes as if they know everything about it. And it's simply like, I think there are some problems doing that. However, like there are ways, depending on your personal situation, to finish a PhD doing it differently. So, yeah, I think it was the norm, but I think with the pandemic and just generally people's different lifestyle, like people with families, don't have to spend a year abroad.
Yes, yet we are because Rebecca got the Fulbright Award, hence 6 months in Mexico and then 6 months in Spain. Um, and we'll get into like me joining and stuff and what that looks like and why we chose what we chose. But we're here, and you explained the archive. You kind of explained like the overarching goal. And before we get to me, how has it been? This has been like your first real week of
Yeah.
being at the archive because the first week we got here, you went like once just to get acclimated, but this has been your first real week of work.
Yeah.
How has like that experience been?
It's been tiring. I think it's also been a little exhausting. I guess those are synonyms, but frustrating at times. I think the Fulbright is very, I think it's a big change. It's a big life change. And so it's hard to adjust in the beginning.
But what does that mean?
And
What do you mean by life change?
well,
I know
because
what you mean, but I'm
we're
asking.
like totally moving abroad, and then you have to navigate institutions that are like different than your home institution, a different like political bureaucracy. Um, And so I like initially and this kind of goes for anyone who works in like Mexican archives, they protect their materials a lot. And so there is like um, different sort of establishments in the archive that change the policies. Like the in 6 months they'll change, in a year they'll change. So you can only do so much prep work. And so the first week there, basically the first day is just like being put into the system, which was complicated because the pandemic changed the system and now they're trying to open it up again. So I kind of came in this like intermediary time, and you basically need to like re-register, you need documentation, you need all of this like it's basically like passport, the whole shebang when you want to like get in there. And so, but once you're in there, there's like a whole set of rules. So like very briefly, what we do, you need to be wearing a face mask, you need to be wearing gloves because you're handling very old documentation and mistakes are going to happen, papers are going to rip, so they're trying to preserve them. However, with my collection, I work with Inquisition documents. Way back in the 80s, they decided to digitize everything to make it into microfilm, which is a very particular technology that was used back then. I feel like it's super outdated, but all of these books have been put onto like literally rolls of film, and you have to read them or take pictures of them and collect them using these very old school 80s. We call them like, I don't know, like lectores, which would be sort of, I don't know, lectors. That doesn't make any sense, but sort of these machines that help
Projectors?
you. Projectors, that's
Yeah.
a good word. And so that's where I spend most of my time. And to sort of like give some context on like what the archive really is, and here in the one I'm using, and they're all very different. The archive is an old jail cell. And so it's a specific kind of vibe. You can't drink water because like you have to leave the room in order to eat or drink. You're in these small like cells that were once like home to 10 men at one time in this very crowded space. And so it's hard work. It's hard work to be in there for several hours at a time, but I think I'm figuring out the system, and I think the worst part is over. I think the first, second week of like getting your boots on the ground, getting in the institution is the most challenging. But once the people there recognize you and they see you come in all the time, you form relationships with people and it becomes much easier. Yeah.
Yeah, and to like make sure you understand, essentially what Rebecca's saying is that the building they chose to use to house the
Yeah.
archive is an old jail. Like
Yeah.
that's what it is. So it still has remnants of that past life of what that building was used for, and they repurposed it obviously for this.
It's very nice. I will say, like, the cells, it's not like dingy and dirty. It's very clean. It's very beautiful to be in, but the workspaces are very tight.
Yeah, and going back, because I called out you when you mentioned
Yeah.
life change. And obviously, everything you brought up is a life change, moving here and all that. That's not what I was bringing up. I was bringing up how you've talked to me about how mainly because of the pandemic, you've mainly worked from home
Yeah, that's
for
also a
like
good point.
2 years, and you still do a lot of the work at home here now, but you have to go out and, like you said, like more or less every day, every weekday, you're out trying to go to the archive, and you're having to um, interact with the people of the archive, of course, and kind of build those relationships. And that takes energy, but also takes energy taking the metro to the archive and like being surrounded by hundreds of people and then, and being an
Yeah.
introvert. I thought that's what you were in reference to.
I mean, I think there's so many ways we can talk about this, but that's also a huge point. I think I'm naturally introverted, very much. I recharge when I'm alone. Um, I enjoy being at parties, but my really true, like, moments of social interaction where I feel I am getting the most out of it is something like this, like a cup of coffee, an intimate conversation. This is what I like, and
Mm.
but people are different, and so I don't get me wrong, I enjoy a party every once in a while, but you kind of, I don't know, I guess we're getting a little old. It's harder to recover, and I just quite frankly find a little bit more joy, and this is where I'm very grateful and fortunate in my own work. But the pandemic did shift everything. I basically taught and wrote and researched from our LA apartment for 2 years. And I mean, occasionally you leave, you meet with professors. Like it was starting to open up at the end before we arrived here in Mexico City, but it is a big life change. It's sort of weird, but it is to travel to a place every single day and using public transportation, especially like I'll talk about that first. Like not having a car in LA, I took the bus the first year, and then at the sort of middle of the second year, the pandemic hit. And so then everything became pretty remote.
Yeah, when
And
we lived in that first apartment in Beverly Hills, we you took the bus the whole time because
yeah,
pandemic didn't start till we moved.
yeah. So I took the bus because it was just more economically advantageous to take the bus from like our first year Beverly Hills apartment to Westwood and UCLA. And so that was like an interesting experience. It was tiring, but it's also like you're traveling in Beverly Hills. Like it's not like, of course, you see sort of economic disparities and social inequality, but it's not as prevalent, I think, as like cities that have a metro. But I don't know. This is just like from my own
Yeah, I
experience.
mean, again, we've talked about this, and again, we're going a little off the rails, but just to
That's
mention, since we're
okay.
talking about essentially homelessness and like people you see
Yeah.
on the street and stuff like that, um, in the same time that Rebecca was working from home, like literally the exact time she started working from home and not going out was the time I started actually working in LA and had to go out.
We really flipped
Yeah,
worlds
we
there.
flipped there because I worked at Target for pretty much a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually worked at the Target in Westwood, which is this, it's like the small town that it's super nice, but it's a small town that is like the college town for UCLA as well. But
It's more like a neighborhood, I think. Because it's still part of LA.
yeah, I mean, it's still a town.
I know. I just don't want people to think it's like different from LA. It's still part of it.
LA is filled with massive amounts of towns and neighborhoods. So whatever you want to call them, Westwood is one of them. Um, and in working through that, I was exposed to a lot more
Yeah, you were.
homelessness that I think Rebecca was. Like every day, I would see people coming into the store, people in the neighborhood of our store, driving from my home to Westwood. It was only like 10, maybe 15 minutes, and I every single time would see some sort of homeless
Yeah,
situation,
you were.
if not numerous. And so my perspective of the whole situation in comparison to here in Mexico is you see a few here and there here in Mexico City. I can't speak for the whole, country of Mexico, but for Mexico City, I don't think it's even close to the same amount of problem that Los Angeles faces. Like Mexico City is one a lot bigger in people. There's like over 22 million
It's
people.
so dense.
22 million people here. I don't know how many people are in LA, but I know for a fact it's less than that. Um, and in terms of the percentage of people that you see that are homeless compared to the percentage of people you see that are homeless or suffering in LA compared to Mexico City, there's way more in Los Angeles. Um, and I know you're like pretty much Rebecca's bringing it up because as she goes to the archive, it's something that she's more exposed to now.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Mexico City version she's exposed to, which, homelessness is homelessness, right? It's not good anywhere you go. Um, but I just thought it was interesting that, LA seems a lot worse to me than Mexico City does.
Yeah.
But it has been one of the struggles that you've been experiencing as we've been here.
It's just, I think, and that just goes to show how much your experience will affect your perspective.
Mhm.
because you working in Target exposed you to a side of Los Angeles that I quite frankly did not expose myself to. Even if I was going to UCLA every day, the bus or I would commute directly to campus, just like not spending time in Westwood, like Westwood Village, drastically changes the way you see the world. Because on campus, it's just students and faculty, and there's very few
Yeah.
homeless people. But I could recall stories of like other friends that actually had an apartment in Westwood where they experienced like walking home late at night and someone was like burning cardboard and they were like scared. And I agree. I think I am a bit sheltered in that sense. The past few years have sort of made me more sheltered than I think I would have appreciated. And you kind of lose your grit a little bit. And you have to like rework on that. Because it's very easy to be very comfortable and safe in a specific environment. And doing this, I think it's a blessing because it's made me see social inequality in a different country. And it makes me realize like pros and cons of living in different areas. For example, here in Mexico, like people offer you a service more often than, I don't want to say this is good or bad, but like then you see people beg.
Well, yeah, and it's like pretty much, and this is a cultural thing,
Yeah.
100%. This is just the nature of different types of people in different areas.
And we're not
Because
experts, right? This is
no,
just
yeah, we're
our
just going based off our
experience.
experiences,
Yeah.
and like I'll bring up France too because we saw
Yeah.
that too. But pretty much like in LA, you will get a handful of people like that are homeless that are maybe you're stopped at a stoplight and they're trying to wash your uh windshield wiper, and then they, if they do it, then you tip them. They're providing you a service essentially to give them a little bit of money. But you also see a ton of people who are just on the street just begging for money. They're outside of stores, on the beach, or wherever they may be. In Mexico, here in Mexico City at least, based off our current experiences so far, I've seen zero beggars,
I
zero
had
people begging for
someone
money.
last night when I was getting coffee, but
So you see a couple, but I've seen a lot more that are like yesterday. We were at lunch and someone was playing an instrument, and then
yeah.
when they were done with their song, they went around asking for money. So it's like a lot more of that type of situation, or they're trying to sell you something. We saw that in France as well.
Yeah.
We'd be on the metro in France, and someone would come into the car, play an instrument, and then before the train stopped, they would stop and ask for money
Yeah.
again, an exchange of services, if you will. And so it is a little bit of a interesting dynamic to be able to see. Again, I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm not saying anything really in particular besides just an observation that I think that the different uh,
Yeah.
cultural approach um, is interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that LA is a lot worse than what I've seen here,
Yeah.
here in Mexico City. Um, but yeah, I know that you've experienced it uh, on your way to the archive a little bit, and yet you haven't really enjoyed that as much.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to say as well, it's very telling of the social, um, like the structures of power in every country. Because in the United States, and we're no experts, but like there's this stigma against homelessness to be attached to drug abuse or something like, and this is very challenging to talk about because we're not experts and we're just going off of our specific perspectives and our experiences, which are clearly biased. So I want to make that point very adamant. But like here, for example, last night I was getting coffee with a good friend, or like I guess she's a good friend now. But we have like there are some contacts here in Mexico City that are also Fulbright fellows, and so I went out to go get coffee in our neighborhood. We were sitting and it was like a really wonderful time. But we had a gentleman approach us, very kind gentleman, very polite, and he explained a situation as he was coming from Guatemala and he was passing through Mexico City, and we don't know if he was trying to like establish here. And that to me is like a different experience of poverty and homelessness in contrast to the United States. You see it in places like LA and Texas, but like this man, we don't know his story to be true, but if, from my like understanding of how the world works here in Latin America, this is like a story of fleeing. Whether it's fleeing poverty, fleeing like a harsh political government, like wherever he may be from, we don't know. But it's different. And it's like experiencing those different kinds of moments where you ask yourself, like, why is the world like this? And what caused these problems to occur in the first place? And so I think in the US, the story is just like different. And I think it's not, it's never going to be linear. We can't like blanket statement and say everyone that is homeless chooses to be homeless or like is here because they don't work hard enough. This is drastically incorrect. And the same is here, but you can tell that there are differences as to why people have been put in specific like social problems, like economic problems as well. And I think that that's been, it's like my brain, when I encounter these sorts of interactions, has never dealt with these kinds of problems before because I've only lived in the United States. Because if you drive around Chicago or LA, you see people begging, and like I've seen that for, how old am I? 26 years of my life. But to now be in a different city, in a different part of the world, and to see different kinds of problems, my mind doesn't know how to understand or like react or behave. And like we were talking about yesterday, I feel ashamed when I don't react how I think I should act. Or I feel like upset with myself because I don't know like this, I don't understand what's happening or like why the social situation is this way. And the only thing I can think of doing is try and learn and to be in a position where I am okay with suffering and try not to blame myself for not understanding everything that's happening here. And that's been tough. Like, I think a similar thing happened in France, and like a similar thing will happen here and will continue to happen. But the only way to continue forward is to see this as an opportunity to grow personally and ask yourself, how can you help eventually, right? Like little by little, what is the way I can show kindness to people and work from there.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people here in Mexico, whenever we've been at a restaurant, we haven't gone to that many. We've been to like three, and but each time we have, and someone comes up and tries to get us to buy something or is asking for money or whatever the case may be, the owner and or like a worker in said establishment always helps that person in some way. Like
Very kind.
we've seen food be given away, we've seen water, we've seen like they're always very welcoming versus get off my property, which is kind of the stigma in some places in the US, not everywhere. And again, in the US specifically, there's such a wide variety of reasons you could become homeless or why there are homelessness. But issues such as like escaping someone or somewhere, fleeing, I think is the word used. So like those types of issues are, I think, ones that are a little less common in the US. But yeah, anyway, it was just something that we've noticed, and Rebecca has specifically struggled with it on her, travels to the archive,
Or just like when we eat,
and just been around.
Yeah.
But it was just worth kind of chatting about here for a second as that kind of unfolds, and as we explore the city more, and as we kind of gain more experience and so on, maybe we'll revisit this and see if our outlook's changed a little bit, if we learn anything new.
I do have sort of one final comment, like as you're talking about dealing with like homelessness in the US and how it's like get off my property in some sort of extreme cases. I think, and I'm being super vulnerable and like honest, and it's something I'm not proud of, but like that's my instinctual reaction. And coming back yesterday, I was like, fuck, I don't like that. Like, why am I feeling deterred, like, by this situation? Why is my first reaction to like clamp up and to sort of be a little harsher than I really would like to be? And I think that just goes to prove like you can be as learned as you want, but there are social and like cultural pressures that you absorb no matter who you are. Like it's just like where you're raised. And it's hard, like you got to learn from that because here, like you said, I think the example is by those business owners that have shown kindness.
Mhm.
And I'm like, in my mind, that's the example I want to follow. I don't want to like, but you have to be tough in some situations too.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
not everyone is happy and,
yeah,
like,
there's a balance
yeah.
that we'll have to learn together and ultimately we'll grow from.
Yeah, and it comes from the experience and so on. Again, like my reaction I think is different than your reaction. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I'm a lot I think less I don't want to say I'm desensitized because I don't think that's a really good word because I still care,
Yeah.
but I do think I'm desensitized to like the effect that it has, or the weight of it a little bit, just because of how much I did have to deal with it, um, in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. But I do think that over our experiences here in Mexico, as we explore more and we go to other areas of Mexico, maybe we see more and more and more. We're only going to grow from that experience, and I think that like you said, like you have been like sheltered for a portion of time. That it's like being shell shocked this first week, being thrown back into it with another, with millions of people.
Yeah.
It's a big change going from being in your apartment all the time to
I mean, just, yeah. Like, life in general, though. I mean, we grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. Like, and this is kind of why I always wanted to do these kinds of things because I knew life is peaceful and blissful in the suburbs. Like, the only issues I ever had growing up were who broke my heart in high school, the drama I had with friends. And as I moved to U of I, and like we have different paths, and I'm not going to elaborate too much on this, but like that's why I do this because it's really hard. And I do that like just to like there are different ways of doing it, and I do it just because I don't want to I recognize like the sheltered nature of it, and I do want to at times like you don't always have to be in discomfort, but have moments in your life that are humbling and that require you to reflect at a level that you have never done before.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, we've talked about this, but the world is a big place, right?
So big.
Just tiny backstory. I was born in the UK, but I moved to the US when I was very young, like second grade. Grew up in the US, like Rebecca said, in suburbs of Chicago. But yeah, I mean, we talked about this in one of the I think our first episode. We talked about like when Rebecca got into grad school in a variety of different places. I wanted to get out of Chicago. I wanted to go somewhere else, regardless of where it was. And obviously California and Los Angeles specifically being what it is and what it, one of the craziest cities in the world, we were like, hell yeah, why are we not going to do this? But on top of that, not only is that a uncomfortable change, and we changed our, we uprooted our whole life and moved across the entire country. Exploring places outside of the U.S. and going outside of your quote native country or where you've grown up to experience how other countries operate and how other cultures operate, how people treat each other, what people care about, they don't care about, the different types of food, what type of values are important to different cultures and so on. You just learn so much, and you learn about how obviously you can learn a lot even just going the differences between Texas and New York or
Yeah, for sure.
Oregon and Florida. Again, the US is very interesting in that dynamic because you can get dramatic changes from state to state. But going outside of the country, it's like there's nothing like it. Like it's insane, especially when there's a different language involved and you don't speak it. That's a whole other ball game that adds to it. But being uncomfortable is very important, I think. Maybe not 24/7, right? Like Rebecca and I are talking about being
Yeah.
fairly introverted. So we do still have our, like today, Sundays are our day where we're not really going to go out and do something crazy. Like we need this time to recharge. So there is, necessary, things that you have to do for yourself if you know yourself well. But in the big picture, trying to constantly be learning and putting yourself in situations where you're, maybe you don't know everything, maybe you're not comfortable. I'm not comfortable walking around the city alone, but I do it anyway. And, I'm slowly, experiencing what that's like, not being able to speak to everybody and, stuff like that. So yeah, I think that what you said, like constantly kind of challenging yourself in that aspect is huge. And I think we've done a good job of really pushing ourselves with that. LA was the first step of many, I feel like. Mexico is insane. We're going to Spain, which is on the other side of the world. I've never been to Spain. And, who knows what's going to come after that. But yeah, I think that is a something to consider. If you're sitting at home and you're, I don't know, maybe in your hometown and you've grown up there since you were born, maybe look into a different state, maybe look into a different country if you want to go crazy and balls to the wall. But I think you learn a lot,
Yeah.
really trying to explore and put yourself in those situations. But yeah, I mean, so outside of like your change in routine and all of that, my
How's
routine
yours been?
has
Yeah.
changed quite a bit.
Georgie, yeah, how's it been your first sort of 2 weeks of like unemployment, but unemployment in the sense of like you're not busy moving your life.
Yeah.
You're trying to reevaluate and work on things you enjoy.
Yeah, because pretty much like Rebecca and I had to make some decisions, and I think we went through this on the first episode.
Yeah.
But obviously came to a decision where we didn't want to be apart. We've done long distance before, and just talking about everything I just said in regards to pushing yourself and so on, I didn't want to stay in LA without Rebecca, one. But two, I also wanted to kind of harness this opportunity to go to another country two countries I've never been to really, and just fully experience those cultures. So I quit my job. um, I've been unemployed once before. I was fired. It was kind of a mutual thing, but it was like they were forcing the hand. It had just kind of like ran the course. And so, but it did come abruptly to us though. And it was November, it was like the beginning of November of 2019 maybe.
I think it was
I think it was
20.
2019 because the pandemic started in 2020. And then I was able to get a different job and I hated it. And then I quit after a month and then I started at Target. So I've only been unemployed the one time and it was very weird the first time because it was, again, not, it was like real unemployment. It was like, Rebecca and I didn't have enough money. Like I needed another job. It was kind of critical. And so anyway, during that whole like 2 months, I was grinding job interviews and trying to, do all these different things and so on. And so that's kind of what that unemployment experience was like. But this, this was pretty tough. Like I liked the job I had. I liked the people I worked with, but obviously, given the situation, the pros of going with Rebecca was obviously substantially more, and I wanted to experience Mexico and Spain and so on. So I left, and like Rebecca just said, for the whole beginning part of May, we were moving. Like we packed up our whole house and our apartment. Sorry, we packed up our whole apartment. Went to Arizona. Had to start packing for Mexico and so on. And so then we came here, and the first week we were kind of together doing our thing, like just getting acclimated and doing whatever. It was really this last week that I had the first feeling of like, what do I do now? Because Rebecca cooks all the time. We don't eat out a lot. Like we've told ourselves, because we're here and we're in this amazing city, like we do want to eat out like once, maybe twice a week. But typically we'll eat out on the weekend. Rebecca will cook food for during the week. And, that's pretty much it. So like and we grocery shop together over the weekend on Fridays and so on. So there's a window of time here during the week when Rebecca is doing her actual work at the archive for hours during the weekdays. It's like, what am I going to do? What am I doing? And so I did start Spanish lessons that have helped kind of with my routine, because essentially it was important to me as someone who doesn't have a job anymore. Like, I wanted to have a routine to help me get out of bed and like actually do something with my morning. I'm very productive in the morning if I get up. So we've done a pretty good job with that together.
Yeah.
Like, we both typically will get up around 5, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later, but typically we're up and we'll have coffee, we'll sit on our balcony. I'll draw and or like color, journal a little bit. Sometimes I'll read, and like these are things that I've had goals to continue to do without losing focus, and so I'm pretty happy with that part of it. Um, and then we'll work out. That was the other thing I really wanted to do was work out, and we'll get into this, but I just want to say definitely gonna lose weight. I feel like I've already lost weight being here.
We sort of both have. My pants are like falling off.
Yeah,
It's redundant.
we talked about it, and we mainly think it's because of how much we have. We don't have a car, so we're walking around. We're going on the metro. Like, it's like a second or third workout of the day, depending on how often you're
Yeah.
walking around. So anyway, I'm happy about that. But it's pretty. And then sometimes I'll have a Spanish lesson. I've currently scheduled them Tuesday through Thursday, and they're from 8 to 9. So it's an hour long every morning, one-on-one with an instructor, and so far it's going pretty okay. I'm hoping to actually gain some momentum with that. But it's after that, after 9, and that's when Rebecca leaves for the archive too. I'll sometimes walk her to the train station, and then I'll come back. And it's after that where I kind of get a little lost. And I am still working on this. I'm still figuring out what I want to do. But for me, I really need to feel like productive, or that I'm adding something to the day or the world or whatever it may be. Numerous days I haven't felt like that. I felt a little lost in the world. And so there's been some days where I'll just like wander the city. Went to the grocery market, the supermarket once by myself to buy pepper, which was scary, but I was able to do that. And then there was like,
You went to the movies too, right?
yeah, I went to the movies once alone. That was also very scary. Um, and, I'm making progress in terms of putting myself outside of my comfort zone in Mexico, like in things relative to that. But when I'm in the apartment, like I'm still trying to figure out
Yeah.
what I want to do for myself. Like, for anyone who knows me, I really love movies. I love TV, analyzing all that stuff, and I like video games and all that. But I kind of just feel like I'm wasting time whenever I do those activities. So I'm trying to find the balance. And also, for anyone who knows me, I really like making videos. So like, whether it's about movies or if it's about Mexico or if it's a vlog or whatever, I just like making videos. So when we kind of talked about me going unemployed, because there's potential for me to get a job that's remote if I want to and make some money. But one of the really big things that we really want is for me not to have to go back to a traditional job at the end of this experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Which adds a lot of pressure.
it does add a lot of pressure. I pretty much, to explain what I mean, is I would love to be able to work remotely in some fashion to spend more time with Rebecca and not have to be as stuck in one place. Like, I'd like to be more mobile, if that makes sense. And so my dream would be to be able to make videos and or have some sort of business that works remotely,
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
So if I can sort of like ask a question that I think is important that like maybe you could elaborate on, like what about like Target because you like that job, do you find advantageous about being your own boss, about making content? Is it the scheduling? Is it the freedom? Is it the opportunity to work on things that you're actually creative? Like, how do you think about that?
Are you asking about Target, or are you asking about why I want to work remotely?
Well, both. Like, what, because you mentioned like you really liked Target, but this is now like a space where you want to recreate it. And it's like, why, if you're already sort of happy at a job,
Well, yeah,
you
and
know?
so when I say I like Target, I really like the people that I worked with, specifically. I would say in terms of the act of the job and the role of the position, I was able to help people. I was in human resources, so I like being able to help other people. But I didn't really like the job though, like the position. And I always tell this to Rebecca, like you can't stay somewhere. Sorry, this flies in here. You can't stay somewhere. I mean, I tell this to everybody really. You can't stay at a place because of the people,
Yeah.
because any of those people can go on and do whatever they want at any time. Everyone has their own lives. Everyone is an individual, and so, uh, like honestly, when I left Target, I was first to go in the beginning of or at the end of April, and since I've left, a couple other people have also left. Not because of me, but just because of their situation and their lifestyle and their timeline or whatever. They went on to do other positions, whether in Target or something else. And that's the exact reason why you shouldn't stay somewhere for the people. Because if I did stay there, if I made the decision, you know what, I don't want to stay like these people, or I do want to stay like these people, then they would have been gone within a month anyway. So in terms of Target, again, in if I just look at the position, I liked being able to help people, and that more or less was it in terms of the big picture of why I liked working at Target. What I like about the potential of doing something remote and or working for yourself, being your own boss, is I really want to pretty much make a job out of some sort of creative aspect. Like I really like being creative, whether that's again drawing, filming, editing, taking pictures, whatever it may be. I've done it for years. It's like the longest running thing that I feel like I've done as a hobby outside of like watching movies and stuff. And so one, being able to have a job that really harnesses the creativity side, because I really like that. And then being mobile is the other big thing.
Yeah.
So
Because you worked holidays at Target.
yeah,
That was hard.
like being exactly. So at Target retail, it's the nature of the beast, right? You work Black Friday. Luckily, I didn't have to work Thanksgiving because the pandemic, the companies changed things in regards to Thanksgiving. But you had to work before and after Thanksgiving, so it's not like we could have really gone anywhere. Had to work on Christmas, Christmas Eve, and all these different things that, when I look at my year ahead, I'm like super relieved, infinitely relieved that we can go wherever we want for Christmas and for Thanksgiving. Like we're not restricted to my time off or my lack of being able to take time off because of that. And that's the other thing in terms of freedom. It's like you are restricted to your PTO, your whether your boss approves it or not. You could have all the PTO in the world, but your boss may be like, no, you can't go. And
Or
it's
working like unconventional weekends. Like you
yeah,
would
I
work
was working every other weekend, and
Yeah.
again, there are many pros. People know the pros of this type of thing. It's just I want to really try to harness that type of opportunity for this year, because again, essentially what I'm trying to say is Rebecca pretty much pays for both of us right now to be here. The Fulbright pays for that. And it's not easy. We're not talking about a lot of money at all. Not even a lot of money for one person, really. And so our income coming in was dramatically slashed. Like I made decent money at Target, and so paying all the stuff off, and I don't have any bills right now, so like it's a huge opportunity. And so again, you brought up how much pressure that could be, and I feel like that's kind of what I'm feeling. Like I feel like each day that I don't have it figured out
You like shame yourself.
yeah, the more I feel
Yeah.
guilty about not, having it figured out already. Like,
Yeah.
am I making YouTube videos? Am I trying to provide a service for someone? Am I whatever? Like,
Am I
there's,
being productive enough?
yeah, there's just a thousand things going through my head that I haven't really been able to figure out. Like, I got to a point in the middle of this past week where I was super stressed out and I was just like, I need to take a break from making videos. I need to just kind of like think a little bit. Because the other thing is, I think I get super over analytical
Yeah.
and I think too much about what could be. So, and on top of harnessing the opportunity that is available to me, I also don't want to be blind to the experience that I could have here in Mexico. I don't want to constantly work. If I could, do something in the city more often. It's not like I'm gonna have another experience like this where we live in Mexico for 6 months. Who knows, obviously, but it's uncommon for this
Yeah.
type of thing to occur. So yeah, so I mean, I'm still pretty much figuring out uh, what I want to do because again, the dream in the big picture is I work for myself and I'm able to provide a certain amount of income that maintains us. I don't want to do something dumb like I want us to be safe. And I have a whole year to figure that out. But trying to approach that without stressing myself out has been kind of challenging.
Yeah. I think there's so much truth in that story. And I think that like you should be nicer to yourself, but like that's everybody, like me included. Like you always kind of shame yourself. You never feel like you're good enough. You never feel like you're productive enough. You never think you're healthy enough. You never think this, that, this. It's overwhelming the amount of pressure, but like I do think it's so important and like you just said, like you even if you spent the entire year doing nothing, you would still gain something because you're living in a different country. You
Yeah.
would still, excuse me, still try new foods, like learn a different language. Like there's so much there, but you'll get it figured out. I'm
Yeah.
confident of it.
It's just like in my head for anyone who, is like, what is he freaking out or whatever? It's like, I used to go to work I'd leave at like 7:30. I'd be there from like 8 or 7:30 to, I don't know, like 4 or 5. It's like your typical kind of like 10-hour workday pretty much, right? Yeah, ish. And so when you do that for so long, and while doing that, I still like not every day, but tried to work out before, tried to make videos before, and was doing a decent job with a few of those things. So it's like I used to cram a lot in 24 hours pretty much. And so I just feel like I'm not doing that as much. Like again, I'm pretty happy with our morning routine. I like the you got to give yourself time to relax too. And I feel like we're doing a good job of that. But it's just if I don't do anything, then I feel like wow, I just wasted hours of what
Yeah.
could have been XYZ. And
And it's only been week 2.
yeah, so I have to work on it. I gotta still think about what I want to try to do because again, I only have so much energy, and I gotta figure out what that energy is gonna be put towards.
Yeah.
I think I am doing a good job of taking advantage of being here in Mexico. Like we've gone to the city
We've done
center,
a
we've
lot
done a lot
for
of
like,
restaurants.
yeah.
We've done a good job with that, and we have a lot planned that I'm pretty happy about. So I'm not worried about our experience here. I think we're really harnessing that to the T. It's just my personal projects and goals I need to really figure out and then just do.
Yeah. I think
So
there's no better philosophy than just doing. I think maybe this comes from like, and again, I think it depends on who you're surrounded with, like the positivity and like, but I at least am a huge advocate of producing no matter what kind of quality it is. And this like depends, this I think applies to any creative space, writing, creating music, making videos, talking about movie reviews, whatever it may be. Like when you start a project, you are jumping into something you don't always know is going to work out. And like you can outline it, and I think that's great, but like having an outline will change over time. Like it's just part of the creative process, and I think it's adapting to that that I know will be just okay.
Yeah, I'm like the king of getting in like some sort of paralysis of like,
Analysis paralysis.
well, analysis paralysis, and sometimes it's like I just don't know what to do, so it's like there isn't anything to try to jump on.
That's tough.
So again, I just have to. It's gonna take a little bit of self-reflection. It's gonna take a little bit of clearing my mind versus
Yeah.
overthinking, and
And there's also no shame. Like, I think that what you're experiencing doesn't have a name, but it's very much writer's block. Like, if you don't have an idea for a video or a piece of content, that is the same thing as like when people go to type on a computer, write a book, and the ideas just don't come to you.
yeah.
There's a Mexican folk artist. Her name is Natalia Lafourcade. Her most famous album, I think either before or after or in its creation, she spent like 5 or 8 years not producing a single song because she couldn't think of it. And honey, you've only done this for 2 weeks, and it's
No, I
like
know it's
we need to be so much kinder to ourselves. Like I think, especially if you're used to being productive, like working 10 hours a day, like making content before that, working out after, it almost feels like the day is wasted. But I think it's not. It's like this is also part of the creative process is getting to know what to do now. Like because you will be changing as a person.
yeah, and I think one of the bigger questions or deeper questions is also like, what do I really want to do?
Yeah.
Like
And that's tough.
I've been in the headspace of making videos for a while, and again, I really like it, but is it something that I could see myself doing as a job? Do I want to provide some sort of other service? And I haven't really explored that. So it's just again figuring out the big picture of like trying to really dream. It's 2024 or 2025, like what do I want to do and what do I want to be doing,
Mm,
and trying to make a path towards whatever that is.
yeah.
So yeah, I think I've just had a lot of like life thoughts this past
I
week.
think both of us have. It's been a bit of a reflection week. Um, yeah, it's
Because it's
been
tough. Like I was in a routine for like 2 years. You're more or less doing the same thing every day. You see the same people every day. You're doing, you like these people and you work well with them and you're excelling. I was doing a good job at this job,
You're doing great.
and so again, it's a big change to be doing that and to be needed and to be
Liked,
complimented and to
yeah.
be uh, again like exceeding at what you're doing and setting a good example and providing to different causes and helping different people, to just be alone not knowing what you're gonna do every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a
And this
big
is the beauty
change.
of the beast. Like, this is why I think doing things that are uncomfortable are so, so challenging in a way that I think is very underappreciated. Like, even if you start a new job, like, there is a period of adjustment. And
Yeah.
that period of adjustment is at times painful because like you are so used to a specific routine, a specific position in a company, leverage, and all of a sudden it's gone. And like you have to rethink, and this is like where your scrappy mind needs to like be in place. And I think that what is so important is faith. You know that through faith and hard work things will work out, but it's like it's hard, and most people will shy away from that. And I think that that's the suffering that's needed in order to grow, in order to create and innovate, because nothing ever got done without failure. there's like failure is necessary to improvisation and the creation of something new. So you're not failing. We're not failing.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
sort of like sort of emotional consequence and understanding of adapting and change is something that eventually leads to big things.
yeah. Like I would love if I like I'm jealous of people who at least say out loud. I don't know if this is what's happening in their head, but they say out loud, oh, I've always known blank is my passion or this whatever. And if I had that, I don't really care if I fail, I'll just do what I love, do what I love, do what I love. But I'm like right now in a place of I'm trying to do what I love or what I think I love, but I think I'm just over analyzing maybe could this make money or do I really love this or do I love something else I haven't tried yet? And it's just a lot of I'm going to have to just kind of do different stuff, whether it's make videos like I've been doing or something I've never tried before and just kind of see what happens. And I think it's going to take time. I don't think it's going to happen right away.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes time, and we evolve as we do it. So,
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty good for today.
yeah.
A lot talked about obviously experiences at the archive and my experience being unemployed, and we'll obviously in different episodes kind of update you guys on how this is going. But appreciate anyone who's been watching, appreciate anyone who's watching this right now, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Let us know what you guys want to, talk about in the comments. Let us know if you have any questions. And thank you so much for tuning in and watching our stuff. We really appreciate it. So have a great day.
Adios.